Hello everyone, my name is Abhishek and welcome back to my channel. Today is 20th of January and as promised, I am here with Azure Zero to Hero series. I know you're all super excited and even I am very excited. That is because in this series, we are going to learn Azure right from the basics. We will cover Azure concepts theoretically, practically. We'll do a lot of demos. We are going to do a lot of practicals, interview questions, and much more. So I'm very excited. And without any further delay, let's get started with the first video of this series, that is Day-0. Yes, today is Day-0, where I will explain the complete course syllabus, how many days this course is going to be, and what we will learn on a day-to-day basis. So this is very important because if you understand the course syllabus, you will understand what is this course about. And not just that, I'll also explain the outcome of this complete playlist. That is, if someone completes all the videos of this series, what will they be capable of with respect to interviews as well as certifications. So please watch this video till the end. And before I start explaining the course syllabus, let me quickly explain two important things. One is this GitHub repository that you see here, Azure Zero to Hero. So this GitHub repository is something that I'm going to maintain throughout this series. If you watch carefully, there is a folder called Day-1. Similar to this folder, I will create folders for each and every day or each and every episode. And inside this folder, you will have notes for the particular video. Here we have two MD files, and after watching the video, you can use these MD files or you can use the notes in this particular folder as a revision material. And anytime if you want to go back and try to understand a particular thing, you can watch the video or quickly come back and look into this MD files. Second thing that I want to mention is about this YouTube channel. So Abhishek.Veeramalla is the YouTube channel, and if you are new to this channel, so this channel is known for Zero to Hero repositories or Zero to Hero playlists. And Azure Zero to Hero is not the first one that we are doing. We have started with DevOps Zero to Hero. Then we completed AWS Zero to Hero. Then we did Python Zero to Hero, specifically for DevOps engineers. We have Terraform Zero to Hero, Docker, Kubernetes, all the DevOps related concepts. We have already completed the Zero to Hero concepts. So if you are new to this channel, please subscribe to the channel. And if you know someone who is interested in learning DevOps and cloud for free, this is very important. If you know someone who is interested in learning DevOps and cloud concepts for free, please share this channel with them. Okay, so let's go back to the topic for today. That is the course syllabus. So I have prepared this course syllabus. I've taken a lot of time to design this course syllabus because I want to make sure anyone who follows this course understands the concepts right from the basics. That's why this course will be completely of 25 days, and we will start with Day-0. Sorry, we'll start with Day-1, where on Day-1, we will understand the fundamentals of cloud computing. And this particular video will be helpful for any cloud provider that you want to learn, whether you are learning Azure, AWS, GCP, DigitalOcean, whatever you are learning. These are the basic vocabulary or these are the basic concepts that anyone needs to understand with respect to cloud computing. Of course, on Day-1, I'll not dive or I'll not deep dive into these concepts, but I'll make you familiar with these particular concepts so that going ahead, whenever I use a particular word, that will not be an alien to you. Because what happens a lot of times is while explaining a particular concept, I might use the word called API or I might use the word called virtualization and people get disconnected. So that's why I want to make sure that before we start with Azure, that is Day-2, on Day-1, I want to cover all the important concepts related to the cloud computing and make you familiar with those concepts. So that's why we will understand what is virtualization, we will understand what is a virtual machine, what is API, what is region, geography, availability zones. Then these are the cool cloud words. You might have heard the terms called scalability, elasticity, agility, high availability, disaster recovery, load balancing. Like, you go to any particular cloud, even if you start reading their documentation, you'll find that one of the main reasons why you should onboard with our cloud platform is because the scalability, agility options that we have. But what exactly are these terms? We will try to understand in day one. And once we understand this, then we are all set to start with Azure platform. Of course, I can start with this particular video, but I've mentioned the reason. I want to make sure people who don't have any basic knowledge on cloud computing should onboard with the Azure concepts that we are teaching. So day 2 is going to be getting started with Azure. And in this particular video, I'll explain you how to create an account with Azure. Then I'll explain you what exactly are regions and availability zones from Azure point of view. Of course, here we understood these terms, the regions and availability zones. But here I'll explain a little more from the Azure point of view. And finally, in day 2, we will also learn what is IaaS or IaaS, PaaS, SaaS models, and what is the difference between these models and which of these models we will use in this particular series. Then we will move to day 3, where in day 3, we will understand about resources, resource groups, and resource manager. Again, this is very important concept because you know in Azure we deal with the resources, and when we deal with the resources, we need to understand what exactly is the concept of resources in Azure, what is a resource group, and resource manager, which is typically the reason and how the resources are created in Azure is because of Azure resource manager. So we will understand all of these things before we proceed with creating our first resource on Azure. Again, I can simply go ahead after we create an account with Azure. I can simply start with explaining virtual machines. But the problem again would be that without these fundamentals. So virtual machine is basically a resource in Azure. Before I explain you what is the concept of resource, resource group, and resource manager, it will not be right to cover the virtual machines. So that's why we will try to cover virtual machines, how to create a virtual machine, how to connect to a virtual machine, how to deploy your first application on the Azure virtual machine. And finally, on day 4, I'll also explain you what exactly is virtual machine scale sets. So you can relate all of these topics to any other cloud provider that you have learned, because in cloud, the concepts are very similar, only the implementation will be different. Like the cloud computing concepts in Azure, in AWS, or in GCP, they'll all remain the same. Only thing is how Azure has implemented auto scaling. That is, in the Azure world, we call virtual machine scale sets, or how Azure has implemented load balancing, right? So we will learn in day 4 all of these concepts. Then we have day 5, where in day 5, we will try to understand Azure networking services. So networking is one of the very key concepts. And when I say this, I really mean it, because towards the end of the video, when I explain you from the interview point of view, from the certifications point of view, you will realize how important is this networking services concept. So I have dedicated 2 videos for it. One is the basic networking, 2 is the advanced networking. As part of the basic networking services, we will try to understand from a real world point of view, what is a virtual network in Azure, what are subnets, what is a CIDR block range. We'll try to understand routes, route table, what is a network security group, application security group, and we will do a demo. Now, when I said real world example, what I'll try to explain is, when I explain the definitions of all of these things, of course, you will understand what exactly is this particular thing doing. But to typically connect all of these things and try to understand how the traffic flows from one particular thing to other will be difficult. So I'll try to correlate with a real-time example. We did the same thing with AWS VPC. So similarly, we'll try to understand the basic Azure networking services with a real-world example. And talking about demo. So in this particular playlist, sometimes I mention the word demo and sometimes I mention the word project. The difference between demo and project is when we do a demo, typically we will do a simple integration of these particular services and we will learn practically how they work. But when we do a project, we will try to do that in the real world terms, near to or proof of concept of a real world example, right? So advanced networking services, where I will try to explain what is virtual network peering. In AWS terminology, we call this as VPC pairing. And in Azure, you can also do the pairing using another particular thing. That is, you can connect two different networks in Azure using VNet gateway as well. So we will try to understand how to connect two different virtual networks in Azure using virtual network pairing as well as VNet gateway. And then we will try to understand the VPN gateway. So from interviews point of view, VPN gateway is also very important because it plays a very critical role in the security. So I'll explain what is a VPN gateway. Then in the advanced networking services, the next thing that we learn is about Azure Load Balancer and Azure App Gateway. So there is a difference between Azure Load Balancer and Azure App Gateway. And I'll also try to explain those differences, when you should use load balancer and when you should use app gateway. Finally, I'll explain the concept of CDN, content delivery network, in Azure. What are the advantages of content delivery network? And with this, till day 6, we have covered virtual machines, some level of compute on the Azure, and we have also covered networking concepts. And because these are very tricky, sometimes very difficult to understand as well, even I'll simplify these concepts. I want to do a interview questions at this point of time just to understand how clear are these concepts. So you can evaluate your knowledge using day 7 on the networking concepts and the compute concepts, right? So that's why I have created a dedicated day where I will do the interview questions and answers point. So this will be interview questions till day 6, where the questions would be on the cloud computing concepts, Azure basics, and Azure networking. You might be wondering, Abhishek, why are you stressing a lot on the cloud computing basics or the cloud basics, the compute resource with respect to virtual machine, and the networking services? Like I told you, this is very important from the interview point of view and also very important from AZ-900 and AZ-104 point of view. So I'll go back and explain what will be the role of this particular playlist with respect to AZ-900 and AZ-104 once I complete the course syllabus. So then you will understand all of these things, how I've structured this course. I've taken like I've spent like 4 to 5 hours to structure this course. That is because I want people to get most out of this playlist. Then we have day 8, and in day 8, we will understand how to deploy a 2-tier application on the Azure platform. So this is the very first project that we will do in this particular Azure playlist. And the 2-tier application deployment will be very easy to understand in day 8 because we have focused a lot on the networking concepts and we have also focused a lot on the basics. So it shouldn't be very difficult if anyone who has followed the first 7 episodes. Then we will switch our gears because we have learned a lot about networking. We have learned a lot about virtual machines deployment. So let's switch gears. On day 9, we will learn Azure storage services. So Azure storage services, I have a dedicated day because there are different types of storage services. I'll explain the use cases as well as demonstrations. Day 10 will be the use of command line interface for Azure. So command line interface is another way of creating resources on Azure. Here I have explained a little bit about the resource manager in day 3, but in the 9 days, I mean from day 1 to day 9, we will learn creating resources through the user interface of Azure or the Azure console. But for the very first time in day 10, we will get introduced to the scripting in Azure. As a DevOps engineer, how can you use scripting? It can be shell scripting, Python scripting, but how can you use this scripting to interact with Azure and create resources on Azure? This is very important as a DevOps engineer because one of our key responsibilities will also be to automate the resources, right? So day 10 will be the first part where you will understand how to automate resources on Azure platform using command line interface. We'll try to create different types of resources in day 10, and we will also try to understand the CLI documentation with multiple references. Day 11 will be similar to the scripting, but here in day 11, we will use Azure templates to create resources on the Azure platform. So we will learn different ways in this particular playlist. Like I've explained, till day 9, we will do everything through the user interface where we will use the Azure console. We'll go to the browser, we'll click some buttons and we will get the resources. But in day 10, we will do it through scripting. Day 11, we will do it through templates. So we'll cover different ways. Don't worry, I have Terraform also. Then we have day 12, where we will move towards the security side. We will try to understand authentication and identity management. And trust me, when I complete the complete course syllabus, then I will try to explain from the interview point of view and certifications point of view. You will realize why did I structure this course in this way and how many different services are we covering in the Azure playlist. So day 12 will be Azure authentication and identity management. As part of this, I'll also cover RBAC. One change is that if anyone has followed my AWS Zero to Hero playlist, you will notice there is a difference on where I place the authentication and identity management. In the AWS playlist, I actually started with authentication and identity management, but in Microsoft Azure, the way authentication and identity management works is little different. There is, there are some different concepts in Microsoft Azure. I don't want to confuse you at this point of time. So that's the reason why I want to place it once you get familiar with the Azure platform, right? So once we get good hands-on on the Azure platform, it will be easy to understand authentication and identity management, which also includes RBAC. Then we will learn how to monitor resources on the Azure platform. Monitoring, here we are not talking about application monitoring, but monitoring of the resources. Let's say you create something on the Azure platform. Where can you watch, or how do you understand who created this? We'll learn all of these things in the monitoring video. Then comes the most asked, that is Azure DevOps. A lot of you have been asking about Azure DevOps. Is Azure DevOps covered in this particular playlist? So we have 5 videos for Azure DevOps. We'll start with the introduction of Azure DevOps. That is, I'll try to explain all the concepts that are in Azure DevOps. What are the different types of services that Azure provides in the Azure DevOps offering, such as Azure reports, repos, Azure boards. We'll learn about the CI/CD of Azure, everything. Day 15, we will do a project of CI implementation, continuous integration. Day 16, we will do the continuous delivery setup. That will be another project. And this particular one will be on the virtual machine. So here, I'm not going to use containers, or I'm not going to use, we will use containers, but the target environment will be a virtual machine. So in day 16, we'll not deploy onto the Kubernetes platform, because for Kubernetes, I have a dedicated video. So the AKS offering, that is Azure Kubernetes Service, we have a dedicated video for that. And in this particular video, I'll explain you what is AKS, how is it different from Kubernetes, and along with that, I'll show you how to deploy an application. So we will take a two-tier application here, and I'll explain you how to deploy that two-tier application on the Kubernetes platform. We'll also learn how to expose it to external world, what is the ingress configuration, everything. Then day 18 is going to be a big project. This will take a long time because I'm going to explain a three-tier architecture e-commerce application with 8 services, 2 databases. There is also a messaging queue. There is a caching service. We did this same project on AWS, but on Azure, I'm going to explain it even more detailed way, and I'm going to explain right from the basics how to create the Docker files for these services, how each service connects to the other service. I'm going to explain the complete deployment workflow, how to create ingress for it. All of these things will be covered in day 18, and the target platform will be AKS. Then day 19 is a dedicated interview Q&A video for Azure DevOps. Like here, I've done a dedicated Q&A video for networking and Azure basics. Here we have another video for Azure DevOps. Now, the reason why I've placed these interview questions in between, these things will help you evaluate your knowledge rather than learning all of the concepts and uh, me trying to cover interview questions towards the end. I want to place them in between so that you can evaluate yourself what is your understanding of the Azure concepts that I'm teaching. Then we will learn about Azure Key Vault. So this is a security point of view where if you have any sensitive information, how do you store that sensitive information on the Azure platform? Then comes one of my favorites and another important things, that is serverless. So I'm very interested in serverless, but that does not mean I have included because I am interested. Serverless has very good future, and we will learn serverless from the DevOps engineer point of view. So I'll not confuse you with respect to serverless from the development point of view, but how does a DevOps engineer use serverless? What are the advantages of serverless for DevOps engineers? So that's where we will cover two real-time projects. One is cloud cost optimization. Second is compliance. These are the two critical activities. If you add these two projects to your resume, there are high chances your resume getting picked up. So we will implement these two projects from the serverless point of view. We will use serverless functions on Azure, and I'll explain detailed steps how to implement cloud cost optimization and how to meet compliance requirements of your organization. Then comes the Terraform. So what we are going to do in this series, we will learn how to automate Azure from the CLI point of view, from the resource manager point of view, and we will also learn using Terraform. So all the things are covered. Finally, day 25, where I am going to explain Azure interview preparation. Once you complete all of these videos, how can you place these things? Like how can you explain these projects in your resume? How to showcase the real-time hands-on on the Azure platform? What is the outcome of this particular series? We will cover everything on the day 25. And talking about Terraform, so we will learn how to connect Azure with Terraform or Terraform with Azure, how to create resources and how to manage the state file. Because we have a Terraform dedicated video, but the problem is that all the videos in this are related to AWS. And many of you asked, like, why can't you do it with Azure? So now it's the time because we are already learning Azure. It will be easy for me to explain how to automate Azure using Terraform. So finally, now let's discuss about the outcome of this particular series. Abhishek, you have explained the 25 days and you told me that notes will be provided, right? Yes, of course, notes will be provided. And I'm also going to explain each and every concept in a very detailed way. What is the outcome of it? So the outcome is that this course is ideally designed for the job ready purpose. That is, my interest of making these videos, preparing the complete playlist, is that anyone who completes all the videos of this playlist should be job ready. So they should be able to apply for DevOps with Azure. Of course, there are the DevOps concepts that you need to learn from DevOps Zero to Hero, because we will not cover concepts like shell scripting. We will not cover concepts like containerization. We will only cover the Azure related concepts. We will learn AKS, but we will not learn all the Kubernetes things, right? So all those things will be available in the DevOps thing. Like for example, if you want to understand what is a deployment, stateful set, daemon set, if you want to understand admission controllers, if you want to understand how to secure API server, those things are not covered in this particular playlist. You can cover them from the DevOps Zero to Hero. So by following both of these series, ideally the goal would be you should be able to get selected in the Azure plus DevOps positions. That is Azure DevOps positions. Secondly, for people who are targeting the certifications, specifically people target AZ-900 and AZ-104. That's why I've also structured this course so that you will be able to clear both of these certifications. You can just go to these pages, like just go to AZ-900 and try to see what is the requirement for this particular certification, right? So you will notice the requirements for AZ-900 are you need to have understanding of compute, networking, and storage. And there is also weightage for each of these sections, like how much you need to, or how many points will be given to the cloud computing. How many questions can you expect from cloud concepts? So 25 to 30% weightage is given to cloud concepts. 35 to 40 is given for Azure architecture and services. And 30 to 35 is given to Azure management and governance. And if you go back and go through the syllabus, we have covered most of these things. We have covered cloud concepts, Azure architecture and services. Typically here, the most important things would be networking, services like Azure DevOps, services like Azure, serverless services. And in the Azure management and governance, typically that is related to cloud cost optimization, compliance, all these things are covered. So we can easily complete these three concepts. All of these three things will be covered as part of the Azure Zero to Hero series. Then if you go back and look at AZ-104. So AZ-104, the concepts are virtual networks, storage, compute, identity, security, governance. We have covered all of these things, right? We have covered what is virtual networks. We have covered storage. We have covered compute. In compute, we have covered everything. Like in compute, we have virtual machines, we have Kubernetes service, we have serverless, everything is covered. Then identity, I have covered identity. There is a dedicated video for that. There is a dedicated video for RBAC. Then there is security. I have covered security from the networking point of view. I have covered security from the sensitive information point of view. I have covered security from the Azure DevOps point of view. Everything is covered. Then governance. Governance is typically compliance and optimization. So we have also covered that. And even if you look at the weightage, you will understand the weightage will also have the same kind of things that we have covered in the series. So that's why if someone completes the series, at least I am confident they will be able to clear Azure interviews and they should be ready to complete the AZ-900 or AZ-104 certifications. Of course, my intention was never to prepare this course from the certifications point of view. But when I have done these things, there were only 2 to 3 concepts. So I thought, I'll also cover them so that anyone who watched this particular thing, they'll get idea of that as well. So now it's a full-fledged course where it is job ready as well as certifications ready. And finally, like I've mentioned you, if you want to share this with someone who is learning DevOps, who is learning Azure, please feel free to share our channel. That will definitely help them, and it will also help us because it takes a lot of time to create such videos. And people who have completed our DevOps Zero to Hero and AWS Zero to Hero, many people have cleared DevOps with AWS positions. They have cleared Cloud Practitioner certification, Solutions Architect Associate. So similarly, I'm expecting the same thing, and I'll try my level best to implement this particular Azure series similar to AWS. And the goal would be Azure Jobs, Azure 104, Azure 900, right? So thank you so much for watching today's video. If you have any questions, do let me know in the comment section, and let me know how excited are you about the first, that is day one. Of course, it's a second episode because we have already completed the first video, that is day 0. And day one will be out on 22nd. So today is Saturday, and many people will not watch the videos on Sunday because Sunday people are in different mood. So I'll upload day one on 22nd, that is on Monday, and I'll try to be as frequent as possible. In the past, people who have followed me, they know that I have uploaded frequency videos with great frequency for DevOps, AWS, Terraform, Python, and I'll try to maintain the same frequency for Azure as well. If not every day, I'll at least try to upload the videos the alternate days. And you can subscribe to the channel, you will get the notifications. I'll keep uploading about the video status on the community tab. So if there is any delay, I'll notify in the community tab. And if there is something unexpected that has come, I'll notify on the community tab. Perfect. See you all in the next video. Take care. Bye bye.